Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Asadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. And I forgot to press over here, make sure that we got a backup recording. Okay, that's going now. Yes, Ananda Chaitanya, about the qualifications of a good disciple. I just saw the verse, very nice verse that he suggested. And before I speak about that, let me talk about the qualifications of a devotee. I think that is the, you're going to have to excuse these occasional noises that come in, but because my internet is on, so messages come. You know, I think did I mention this before? I've mentioned it before. I don't know whether it was at the previous talk, but the concern that our Krishna consciousness movement actually imbibes Gaudiya Vaishnav culture. The culture of what it actually means to be a Vaishnava. And well, interestingly, we have two different types of cultures. They're the same culture, but they have two perspectives. We call it Vedic, and that's sort of the, I guess, welding of the two in the earthly sphere. But on one side is the culture of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. Am I speaking okay? Tarangini, I can see you. Not too fast? No, okay. So on one side is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, and that is the culture of the sadhakas, the culture of the practicing devotees, whether they're conditioned souls like we are, or whether they're actually eternally liberated souls. Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtana. So the eternal associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that wasn't the verse I wanted to cite. Gaurangera Sangi Maghe Nitya Siddha Karimane. The associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are all Nitya Siddhas. So this, what is the conduct of the perfect practitioners? We're practitioners, but we're not perfect. But there are the perfect practitioners, which means they have the perfect conduct of practicing devotees. And that perfect conduct is one aspect of our spiritual culture. It's a sort of unique feature is the magnanimity or the desire to give Krishna consciousness to others, and it experiences Krishna consciousness in a mood of separation, which implies a certain type of conduct, a certain type of extraordinary humility, as I was talking about last Sunday, Tinadapi Sunichena, the feelings of separation from Krishna really induce humility. And of course, when you're very humble, then you behave in a certain way. Then on the other side is the Krishna and his associates in the spiritual world. We get this occasional people bumping in to the talk, which is a bit distracting. Don't you have control, Chaitanya Chandra, to just mute everybody?
We do, but the problem is if I mute everybody at the same time, I also mute you, and it's difficult to. I'll be.
Okay, that's something we should communicate to the programmers, that they got a little defect in their program. Okay. Sachimata, your hand is really in my face. Thank you. So the other is the, just remember that, right now I'm looking at 25 people. So if you all start doing different types of things, it gets very distracting. I can always go to the next 25 people, but then I don't know, I can't see what I'm doing. Of course, I could just turn my cell phone and then I just look at speaker view. No, that's Chaitanya Chandra. That's not me. And, oh yeah, here it is, speaker view. Okay, I got Chaitanya Chandra, Nandini, and Rajendra Krishna. So all of you behave properly, and then I only have, I'm only seeing you all. The rest of you can do whatever you like. Now I'm not seeing. The only problem is I'm looking at myself, which is not such a great darshan. Okay, and the other side, now for the third time I'm saying it, the other side is the culture of Vrindavan, where devotees experience extraordinary sweetness and they experience the wonder of meeting with Krishna, being in Krishna's association. So that is the conduct of those two things are really very extraordinary. And that's what whoever speaks in Chaitanya Chandra, just take them off. You can do that, right?
Ja, Gizi Mama, letztes schnell kapcsolja meg egyszer a mikrofon, meg kikapcsoljam, jó?
Well, just best you don't give them any warning. You just take them off.
Okay.
Otherwise, 150 people start doing this. We're not going to get very far with this. You notice 20 minutes has gone by. I haven't gotten to say very much up to now.
Okay.
So the conduct of the Brijbasis, the conduct of the Navadvipvasis, these two actually comprise our culture. And as I said, they both have two unique features, but their conduct is overall very, very similar. The distinction or the feature of the two, if we're going to actually really follow, is the behavior of the residents of Navadvip. Therefore, for instance, we don't get dressed up in the way that Krishna and the cowherd boys or gopis dress up, but we dress in the way that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates dress. And similarly, we conduct ourselves according to the direction or the methodology of the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And And what is that? What is that particular culture? How do they, well, in Arjun's words, uh, how do they walk? How do they talk? How do they sit? How do they stand up? Very interesting things. How do they sit? Now, I just sort of scanned through everybody, but how do you sit? Are you sitting like yogis are meant to be sitting? Well, even if you're sitting in a chair. So, how do we sit? How do they walk? Interesting that the walking of Stita Pragyashakavasa Samadhi Stasya Keshava Stita Dirkim Prabhashita Kimashita Vrajeta Kim Prajahita Itakaman Sarva. So Arjun's listing all of these things, and he's not even asking what's his internal meditation, but he's asking what's his conduct. So why? Because actually you can tell the internal symptom of somebody by their external conduct. Hidashi Sophia. See if I can get rid of everybody here. That'll help me concentrate better. No, I can't. So these things are, in one sense, external things, but the external things are really indicative of the internal. Just like when I look at these pictures, these little thumbnails, I see how much people are listening and paying attention. It's good for me because it helps me get an idea of what our relationship is. It doesn't take much. The external is a very clear indication of the internal. I'm having a problem here. Just bear with me. Okay. So it's that culture of you don't mind if I look this way. I've got more attentive people on this side than I do over on this side. There's 4 of them sitting over here, and they're all paying attention. So it's much more a clear message about how a person conducts themselves, lives their lives, and so on, by these external activities. And this sort of culture, this is indicative of a person's consciousness and also indicative of a person's education. Srila Prabhupada had a certain way of talking. If you see how Srila Prabhupada spoke, gestures Srila Prabhupada made, how he kept his fingers, and so on, these were all indicative of Srila Prabhupada's aristocratic demeanor, aristocratic bearing. And that is Chaitanya Chandra. I think I may not be able to continue. I'm getting too distracted. Is there any way of shutting off all the videos?
Yes, Guru Maharaj, if you click twice left button of mouse, it will be on the speaker.
Yeah, you can see you just yourself.
Okay, start video. I stopped the video. I'm still seeing everybody.
I think if you right click on the on your thumbnail and on your own thumbnail, and then you have,
Stop video.
we don't want to stop the video. What we want to do is pin the video, isn't it, Anjari?
You have to pin the video, Gurmaj, and then be on full screen, and then you're the only one who's visible.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again.
So you right click on your thumbnail, and then there's on that drop down, there's a pin video,
Right.
and then you need a full screen for the actual whole window.
Full screen. Gallery.
Top right hand corner.
Top right. Okay. Yeah, I had that before. I still got these people on the to the right, but
okay, maybe we'll ask them to turn their videos off. Those three
you can
people.
also close that off. On the top of it, there are little icons, and the very left one closes those videos.
okay. Anyway, we'll live with those over here, at least for now. Okay, I'm trying to this. Okay, I think you're getting an idea why I'm talking about culture. I've been spending half an hour trying to talk. I can't. I can't because people are moving around, people are talking, people are cutting in and out. That's a lack of culture. It means, because what is culture based around? Well, here it's based around, it's based around, in both cases, love, respect, respecting, in the case of here, we're talking about spiritual master, disciple, respecting what I'm getting, that I'm actually receiving something valuable. You know, if I was to meet all of you and I bring, I don't know, either I bring a cake or, well, for some people I bring a cake, for some people I bring a bar of gold, for some people I tell them that, you know, they just became GBC, and for some people I bring some Shastra. Then what do? When you get that present, you immediately sit up. You immediately sit up because you're receiving it. You're receiving something, and you're receiving something of value. That becomes immediately the how does one sit? How does one talk? And immediately you reciprocate like that. Oh, thank you very much, because I'm receiving something. So our culture is based around one of these aspects. Prabhupada would say love and trust. This is what Krishna consciousness movement is about. And this concept of respect. So make it easy. That if you're coming online, then you're making it easy on me, because it is distracting. We'll rethink this again, whether it's so advantageous to have Zoom. It could be much cheaper just to do an audio conference, and doesn't cost, I don't think, anywhere near this. So it's only me talking anyway, and you can just always stick a picture there if you want to see on your computer. So this concept of respect, but I didn't want to start with guru disciple. I just wanted to start with Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Of course, I'm not, I don't see devotees as much as I used to, just because I'm restricted here because of virus. I've been sitting here for, well, we're getting on to 8 months now. But I don't, or very rarely see, I'd say very rarely, see such a thing that Vaishnavas greet each other and pay their obeisances. Now, this was like the standard norm when I was a young devotee, and for many years thereafter, this idea that yes, Vaishnavas, that's how they greet each other. They offer their obeisances to each other. Why? Because they respect. Who are we respecting? Well, primarily, Krishna is really manifest in the heart of this person. And so I have to show respect for that reason. And that's general. Sunicha supakecha pandita samadarshana. So Krishna talks about this samadarshi because, yes, super soul or Krishna is situated in the heart of everything, especially everything that moves or everything that lives. But what to speak of Vaishnavas? And Vaishnavas are especially dear to Krishna because of their spiritual commitment. They then become more respectable. And according to the level of their spiritual advancement, they deserve different levels of respect. So Vaishnavas at least, well, we do that in the temple room in the mornings, that devotees offer their respectful obeisances to each other. It's not a Shamakund, now you're the person who's, of course he can't hear me because he went to do, I don't know what, munch something off somewhere. Oh, but that's going to be the risk if you're on there. Then I'll embarrass you. So the what was I saying? I'm asking for people what I was saying. I just want to see everyone knows what I was saying.
Offering obeisances, Guru Maharaj, that was a standard.
Thank you. Yes, I know, but when you come in we offer obeisances after Mangalartik to the devotees. But what happens, not during Mangalartik, but what happens when devotees are coming in the temple room before Mangalartik? That means we just ignore each other until a convenient mutual time. In other words, we don't greet each other. You know, you try telling that to your parents that, you know, I don't know, you're meeting your mother, but you don't bother to say hello until your father shows up as well, because it's more convenient to do it all together. So no, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Vaishnavas. Why? Vachakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namaha. So offer our obeisances because Vaishnavas are kalpataru, because they're special, they're extraordinary, and they may not be fully realized, but they are certainly worthy of respect. And then, as I mentioned, to be able to recognize devotees who are at different levels of Krishna consciousness, and to offer respect proportionately. So, Krishneti yasagirita manasadriyeta, dikshashti tit, and so on. So then Rupa Goswami talks about different levels of respect that's shown, that you assist those who are junior, those who are equal, you have loving, respectful relationships with, not sort of informal things, informal in the sense that you can say anything, do anything, but still it's a Vaishnava. And those who are more advanced. And those who are more advanced, to what degree? Without that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says devotees are naked. So they have no clothes on. It's like the king. The king has no clothes. So unless one actually knows how to conduct themselves as a Vaishnava, then Arjuna says, you don't know how to walk, you don't know how to talk, you don't know how to sit, you don't know how to stand, you don't know how to eat or drink, then actually being a Vaishnava becomes very restricted. And the real risk of not knowing proper sadachar, and now that's what it's called, sadachar, the conduct of sat, and sat means the sadhus, of Vaishnavas, and sat also means nasate vidyate bhavo, nabhavo vidyate sataha, the conduct that leads to truth. So the risk is that without proper sadachar, one will commit offenses. And one will commit offenses to juniors, to equals, to seniors, to spiritual master. It's inevitable. If you don't know how to behave, you will do it. I've sort of gotten to the stage of stopping to correct people. That may not exactly be correct on my behalf, but I'm sort of a little worn out from doing that. Been going on for 50 years, and I'd rather be a good guy, one of the good guys who just never gets on anybody's case and is always nice and friendly. Of course, I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm working on it. But the risk is that someone else will have to do it, and I'm hoping others do that. And of course, Yadi Vaishnava Paradi Uti Hatimata. And if one then commits Vaishnava Parad, then, or Guru Vagya, then the increased risk is that one will not be able to chant Hare Krishna, and one's advancement in spiritual life will very much be curtailed. So this concept of respect, I gave one example of offering obeisances to each other. Srila Prabhupada was extremely respectful to his disciples. That's where this occasional reference in the early days of relating to or calling Mataji's Prabhu came. Prabhupada wanted to emphasize this concept of master. Srila Prabhupada really empowered his disciples, so much so that he would, I was in Montreal, which was a place where Prabhupada spent quite a bit of time in 1969, 1968, 69. And but still, thereafter Prabhupada didn't come when I joined, but still there was this extraordinary respect from uninitiated devotees to someone who got first initiation, to Brahmins, the temple president, the GBC. These were like, we really looked up to these. I think I've described that, but what I'm trying to emphasize is that it really sifted down from Srila Prabhupada, this concept of showing respect. That Prabhupada was very respectful to his sannyasis, to his GBCs, and so on. Of course, Prabhupada also didn't hesitate to sometimes to chastise devotees when there was something wrong. And Prabhupada's habit generally was that he didn't do it in private. He didn't just say, come with me. Wherever Prabhupada was, there at the time, there Srila Prabhupada corrected, whether it happened to be in the middle of a temple room with 500 devotees, or he was on a morning walk or whatever, but when Prabhupada wanted to say something, he said it. And he didn't wait. So yes, this sad achar, the contact that leads to self-realization. Devotees are well aware of the process of sadhana, and they know you have to do sadhana in a certain way in order that it will lead us to Krishna, in order that it will actually, in order that it leads us to Krishna consciousness. And you can't make any mistakes when there's sadhana. Sadhana is a science. It's a stairway, step by step. So that's also sadhana, that path that leads to sadhya, that leads to protection. The same sat is there. So sadachar is the same thing. So here is the spiritual practice that leads to perfection, and here's the conduct that leads to perfection. Just like you make a mistake in the spiritual practice, then we can't expect that we'll get perfection, and we make mistake in the conduct, and we can't expect. Both of those things are there, and therefore devotees need to be aware of both. I know, for instance, Radhanath Swami Maharaj places a lot of emphasis on sadachar, on the appreciation and respect and valuing of Vaishnavas. It is very important for us as a basic foundation. I haven't gotten to, and maybe I won't get to, speaking about the spiritual master. How long do we go to, Chaitanya Chandra? Is this hour or hour and a half?
It would be nice if it's hour and a half, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. So this is a foundation. If you want to know what it's about, you have to read up on it. It's like sadhana. If you want to know sadhana, you have to study. So here's also something that you study up on. I gave one example, in other words, in terms of how we offer obeisances to each other when we meet, or anytime we meet. Some devotee comes to the temple, I don't know, from another temple, we would immediately offer our obeisances and then embrace. That's just ladies, men, same. That's how devotees, that's how Vaishnavas greet each other. So we can ask what happened, because I don't think Chaitanya Chandra, was that there in the early 90s?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Is it there now?
It's not now, not so much.
Yeah. So what happened? Krishna says, Sakahile namahata yoganasta parantapa. This is the influence of time. So maintaining things over time, especially Prabhupada would use this phrase, you're an older devotee, wasn't a GBC, wasn't a sannyasi, wasn't a temple president, but Prabhupada said, you're an older devotee. He would use this phrase and expectation when it came to some event or something was happening in the wrong way, someone needed correction. Prabhupada didn't just expect that it was going to be some official person in the area who's responsible. He was expecting the older devotees, that the older devotees are the guardians of standards, because they're the ones who have gone over this Kalinena Mahata. They're going through time and they're passing on to the new devotees. So this is Krishneti Asagrita Manasadrita. This is what we're passing on down to the younger devotees. We're giving them the same standards, what we've received, and we don't let that change. And that's the responsibility of any older devotee, any Brahmin, to make sure the devotees are up to the standards. And you know, it's not that devotees come up to each other, stand and say, Vancha Kalpas Prabhu. That's not the standard. Get down and say the whole mantra nicely and slowly. Why? Feelingly, that I'm actually offering my respect to someone else. And then, of course, there's so many other aspects to that. How do you sit? So if I'm not going to go into gallery view and look at how everyone sits. A lot of devotees were sitting nicely, but not everybody. Not certainly the way that they sit in a Bhagavatam class. And then, of course, that's the ones who I get to see. Then there are the other ones who have their pictures on, then I don't know what's going on behind that. But how is it that I'm sitting? Just, we have a pretty good standard in Bhagavatam class. Everyone knows what's expected. You sit nicely, you sit in a full lotus position, or if there's some problem, you sit in a chair, you're attentive, you're awake, you look. It makes for a certain type of interaction. And that being able to sit in a proper way. It's the same thing when it comes to chanting Hare Krishna. How are you sitting when you're chanting Hare Krishna? So here we're receiving the most valuable gift, the holy name. We're performing worship, meditation. We're in the presence of Krishna's incarnation. Now, in the presence of Krishna, how do we sit? So we're not supposed to be slouched. We're not supposed to be laying down. We're not supposed to be doing any things. We're supposed to be in a very respectful way. Again, it's meant to be in a proper asana, or to stay awake. You kneel or you stand up, and we're receiving the mercy or the blessings. So this idea of knowing all of these different aspects, then we can get to one of my favorite topics, which is how do we eat and what do we eat, but I won't get into that. You've heard me talk about that a lot. Is the devotees actually know how to eat? I know that you know that it's supposed to go in your mouth, but over and above that, how it goes in your mouth, with what instrument it goes in your mouth, what is it that we're meant to eat, what's the order that we eat on, how is it supposed to look in your plate, what do we do while we're eating, honoring prasadam, that this is our Mahaprasadam Govinde Nam Brahmani Vaishnave, that this is our respect. It's the basic sadachar of a Vaishnava. What is the standards and the behavior that parents pass on to their children? That's a loaded question, and there's a lot there. What do children learn? How do they learn how to respect? Because ultimately, that is a good part of their education, as Srila Prabhupada said, learning how to respect Vaishnavas. Why would Prabhupada say that? That 75% of children's education is learning how to show respect to Vaishnavas. Because if you can show respect to Vaishnavas, then the learning will happen very quickly. You will be very receptive, they will be very willing to give, and the channel will be very open. There's 160 devotees here, say there's 160 channels. There's many devotees actually on some channels. There's 160 channels. But everyone doesn't hear the same thing that Sri Ram Swami is saying. That's not how Shabda works. Shabda, or transcendental sound, works that according to Shushudho Shadadanascha Vasudeva Kataruchi. According to your faith, according to your openness and receptivity, devotees will hear different. They will hear different. What they hear will go to different depths, and it will have a different result, a different reaction. Why? Because Shabda is what? Shabda is Krishna. So this is Brahma. That's how Vedanta Sutra begins. It starts now, Atato Brahma Jignasa. And what is that Brahma Jignasa? Shabda. Brahma, we're looking after Brahma, and what is that Brahma? Brahma is Shabda. Brahma is the transcendental sound. Okay. Was the feedback coming from me?
Not sure, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Yes, this Shabda is Brahma. It's Krishna. Tava Kata Amritam. Tava Kata Amrita. You are actually this Kata Amrita. There are the Katamrita about you, but you are actually Katamrita. And Krishna will reciprocate. Jejatamam prapadyante, to the degree that we are attentive. Same thing with chanting Hare Krishna. Everyone's saying the same words, but devotees are getting different reciprocation. Based on what? Based on how they hear, how attentive they are. Why? Because Abhinatva Namanamino, because there's no difference between that name and Krishna, and Krishna's, well, I don't know. I was about to say Krishna's fussier than I am, and I don't know whether he'd hang on for so long if he sees he's being neglected. I think you may have that experience that you start chanting Hare Krishna, you fall asleep once, twice, 3 times, that 16 rounds is gone. You can't get it back. You sort of start again the next day, and you try and build good, because Krishna's withdrawn. And he's got other things to do, other places to be. People are calling him with a different type of name, with a different type of attention. So respect in regards to eating and so many other things, everything that we do in Krishna consciousness follows this formula. Jejitamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamiyaham. And so that conduct. If we really want to study it, then if we study Chaitanya Charitamrita, as I mentioned, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's conduct and his associates is that which is most relevant to us. And they're such a wonderful example of how Vaishnavas interact, how they respect each other. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even though he's Supreme Personality of Godhead, but still he's showing respect. And he shows respect, he shows how to deal with his godbrothers, he shows how to deal with others, how he offers respect to seniors, Paramananda Puri or Brahmananda Bharati and Advaitacharya. It's very, very wonderful. It's very sweet. And it's that sweetness of relationships that's very essential to us, rasa vaisa. And for that reason, I've had countless times the devotees write me, ask me, says, I don't have any friends in Krishna consciousness. I don't have any real close friends. When before I was a devotee, I had friends. Well, now that I came to Krishna consciousness, I don't really have friends. I have acquaintances. So what is the characteristic of friendship is that it has a very sweet interaction that endears you to that person. It gives a rasa. It gives the rasa of friendship. So, but for us, that rasa will work when we actually function as devotees. Now that I'm a devotee, then I don't have such good relationships. Well, be a real devotee, and then hopefully others are real devotees, and then the rasa will work. But if we're not really quite devotees, and unfortunately that's what Bhagavatam says, nata chaneshu bhakteshu. You don't know what etiquette is. You don't know what sadachar is. You don't know how to treat Vaishnavas. You don't know how to treat spiritual master. You don't know how to treat Krishna. So nata chaneshu bhakteshu sa bhakta prakrita smitaha. And that's the Kanishta Bhakta. So he doesn't know sadachar. And conversely, it means we don't know sadachar, we stay on this level of Kanishta. Ishvara tadadineshu. Now maybe we're worshipping Krishna, and maybe we're on the altar and doing puja and so many other things, or dressing the deity and cooking and doing sankirtan, but we don't know. Nata chaneshu bhakteshu. So for me, I've yet to get there, Ananda Chaitanya, about here talking about relationship with spiritual master, because I think in one sense devotees are a little more in tune, at least to certain externals and internals are more there, more in place, because it gets perhaps more emphasis, and devotees read about it, and they sort of know that they're expected to do that. But it starts here. It starts at the level of the Vaishnav community. And then, of course, that means Vaishnavis with Vaishnavis, Vaishnavs with Vaishnavs, Vaishnavs with Vaishnavis. How is it? How does it all work? What is the proper sadachar and interaction? And why is it important? Because Srila Prabhupada repeatedly said, we are a culture, a spiritual culture. We're not a religion. Because a religion is just one part of society. This is just one aspect of a social structure. We're actually a religious or a spiritual society, organization. We're meant for the re-spiritualization of the world. We're trying to re-spiritualize the Krishna consciousness movement to start with, before we're going to re-spiritualize the world. And we want to really establish that on the basis of how it is that we behave, how it is that we conduct ourselves in terms of this Vaishnav culture. I just got lost. I was going somewhere, but then I sidetracked myself. No one to blame there. Oh yes. Because we're meant to be a cultural revolution. And for a culture, a very important part of that culture is how devotees conduct themselves. Now, Srila Prabhupada was approached. I've also been approached, but I'll give the example of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was often approached by aristocratic Indians, Brijbasis, his godbrothers. Why are your disciples like this or like that in terms of how they behave? And Prabhupada would say, what can I do? All my followers are 10th class people. Sometimes he sort of upped it a little and said that they're 5th class, but generally we were somewhere down there in the 5th class, 10th class category. So yes, we're definitely 5th class. We have to be aware that our cultural upbringing is Rakshasa culture. And although some of that upbringing seems to be, even in one sense, more than what devotees, some devotees bring with them, real lack of training at home by their parents. So, but Srila Prabhupada wanted, and unfortunately, Srila Prabhupada was in a race with time. There was only so much that Prabhupada could do. So Prabhupada was translating, he was teaching us deity worship, giving classes, traveling around the world, starting farms, starting restaurants, trying to keep us Krishna conscious, sorting out unlimited problems. He was the ultimate authority. So it was miraculous, inconceivable what Srila Prabhupada did. And Prabhupada wanted. This was one of the reasons Prabhupada asked his godbrothers and some other of his godbrothers' disciples to train us. He says, please train them. They don't know what it means to be a Vaishnava. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, we're well isolated from the rest of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, partly because Srila Prabhupada was very concerned about our interaction, and partly because we've sort of adopted a certain mood that the only people who know anything about spiritual life are devotees in ISKCON, and outside of ISKCON, no Vaishnavas know anything, which is not the case. And then later on in September 77, Srila Prabhupada had said, the war's over, meaning his sort of, not war, but his distance that he kept us from his godbrother specifically he was talking about. I'm not saying that therefore we should open the floodgates and everyone should go. I'm just explaining that there's a dearth, there's a lack here. It does exist. And I've spent time with other Vaishnavas, and I see how they walk, talk, interact, behave, offer respect, and so on. And Srila Prabhupada wanted. Srila Prabhupada wanted us to assimilate that because that too was very important. And it isn't that Prabhupada didn't teach us many things. As I mentioned, Prabhupada taught us this principle of respect. That respect filtered down. Prabhupada taught us how to go in the temple room. You wash your feet before you go into the temple room. You don't go in socks. You wash your feet. You go in bare feet. You offer your obeisances. And Srila Prabhupada taught us how to. You wash your hands and mouth before you eat. You wash your hands and mouth after you eat, along with your feet as well. And so many other aspects of culture. And Prabhupada taught us. He taught us to eat with our hands. And for those devotees who were with him, and that's why Prabhupada wanted his GBC men, they were spending a month at a time. He wanted them to see how he walked, how he talked, how he ate. You start with Kerala, you start with the bitter. There are certain vegetables you don't put lemon on. You don't put lemon on everything. You don't eat things here and there. Everything has its particular order. You eat the curd sabji the last, not first. You mix eggplant with rice. You don't eat it with chapati. So this is, if you sit down with some wealthy people because you're preaching to them for lunch, they're watching. They want to see what you do. Or if they're not watching, they're eating, but they will notice when you do something that even street sweepers don't do. So, and Prabhupada wanted us to learn. And Prabhupada wanted us to imbibe that type of our culture, our Vaishnav culture. So it's very important. And unfortunately, in one way, for instance, devotees are linguistically and geographically isolated. Srila Prabhupada went to certain places. Some devotees were able to see Prabhupada. Of course, many of those devotees have now passed away. What they've taught and how that's filtered down. Chaitanya Chandra sort of grew up in Soho Street in London. Now, Srila Prabhupada spent an enormous time there. That means there were a lot of devotees who would say, Prabhupada said, Prabhupada did. This is what Prabhupada wanted, because they saw it. But there are many devotees now who don't know what Srila Prabhupada said and saw and wanted, especially those in new languages. Take an example, for instance, of Romania or Turkey, or how do the Turks know? What do they know? So, and what do they see? They may have a Bhagavatam class, or some older devotees may give a class and so on. But it's a little different than actually seeing how to live. That culture is something that you sort of pick up by observing how someone walks, talks, sits, eats, etc., and conducts themselves. It doesn't necessarily just come across in a class. It's not going to come across just by what I'm saying, but it comes across by well, you can see, look, this is how Vaishnavas dress. Now, it's true that I'm not always dressed like this, but when I'm talking to you, I'm dressed like this. And see how nicely shaved I am? And I have tilak. And so, and if you look around here in the room, everything's very nice and neat and clean. So that's how that's not a show, but that's actually how we're meant to be imbibing that same type of thing. So unless we really make extraordinary effort to acquire this culture, then it'll go, and that's not good. So philosophy you can get pretty easy. The mantras you get, the initiation you can get, and so on. But if the conduct isn't there, then the lack of conduct may end up becoming a albatross around your neck. And it may end up being a real burden, something, galagraha, as Srila Prabhupada said, that it's a burden and something that slows one down in one's spiritual progress. Because ultimately, respect, love, and trust, Prabhupada said. So our business ultimately is to awaken love, and love is for Krishna and for everything Tadiyanam, Samachanam, and for everything that relates to Krishna, Krishna's associates. We have to know how to show that respect to Vaishnavas. And that's really the substance. Just because Ananda Chaitanya gave this verse, and I'll just read that verse. I don't know if it's on here for devotees to see, but they can also see. This is from 11.10.6. Amani amatsaro daksho nirmamo dridhaso rida asatvarorta jignasur anasuyur amogavak. The servant or disciple of the spiritual master should be free from false prestige, never considering himself to be the doer. He should be active and never lazy, and should give up all sense of proprietorship over objects of the senses, including wife, children, home, and society. He should be endowed with feelings of loving friendship towards the spiritual master, and should never become deviated or bewildered. The servant or disciple should always desire advancement in spiritual understanding, should not envy anyone, and should always avoid useless conversation. Wonderful. I mean, I could continue on that for a long time, but just a few words on each point. Servant or disciple of the spiritual master. I guess someone could be a servant who's not a disciple. I don't know why both are used, but he should be free from false prestige. That I'm someone. That goes in general for devotees. And of course, we get this concept of prestige. I'm someone because I happen to know something. In other words, maybe I'm a good scholar. I happen to be a good singer. and I sing bhajans. I happen to be in a position of authority. So something. I happen to be a big donor. But one should not false prestige. In other words, prestige is false. The whole concept of prestige, that I'm something special, but actually, anor aniyan, that we're nothing. We're smaller than an atom. So we're very insignificant. And what to speak of being insignificant is one thing if we're insignificantly small in the spiritual world, but we happen to be insignificantly small in the material world. And that means because we're stupid. So that's why it's called false prestige, because any prestige that you have, I mean, you've got to be stupid to think that you got something to be proud of if you're in the material world. There's nothing to be proud of here. So Bhagavatam says, even the pauper is proud of his penny. What's a penny? You know, I've got some pennies here in my drawer that I keep when people give dakshin, and I give them out at a certain point to kids. But what's a penny? A penny's nothing, but still some people are proud of a penny and never consider himself to be the doer. Nimittamatya bhavasavasachin. So Krishna says, just consider yourself an instrument. So in this case, a devotee is always an instrument of a spiritual master. Well, that's a lot to unpack, because if I'm an instrument of a spiritual master, that means that I'm doing everything that spiritual master wants, which for devotees living in a temple is easier, hopefully, because they're meant to be living in the Gurukula. And then devotees who are outside the temple, well, they're also living in the ashram. So the Grihasta Ashram. Now, unfortunately, everyone's home is not necessarily a Grihasta Ashram. That's because the husband and wife are not necessarily both devotees. In a lot of cases, we have a situation where one is not so much interested in Krishna consciousness and the other one is. So it's really difficult to have a Grihasta Ashram like that. That's to be acknowledged. But nevertheless, somehow we need to organize our life in such a way that I'm doing what my guru wants and I'm an instrument for my spiritual master. I'm acting to fulfill his mission. And of course, what's his mission? Well, his mission is Prabhupada's mission. And Prabhupada's mission is Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam, is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. So how am I acting to fulfill that mission? That's when I'm an instrument. As soon as I'm no longer doing that, as soon as my life is in prana, artha, diya, vacha, as soon as my life is not dedicated to that, then I'm the doer. And anyway, Krishna talks a lot about the concept of this false doer in the Bhagavad Gita. It's not the path to be on. One then opens himself up, opens herself up to accumulate a lot of karma. And of course, that means in terms of my work, how I live. Anyway, Kim Tadbhasya, how I speak, how I walk, how I talk. It's more difficult at home because who's going to tell me what to do? In this case, only a very good relationship between Krishna conscious husband and wife really works, that we can correct each other, help each other, and really develop both in terms of sadhan as well as in terms of our cultural development, our sad achar. So he should be active and never lazy. You know, now we have, for instance, here In Hungary, have this principle that devotees have to do 7 hours of service a day, and here it's 5.5 days a week, and the other half day is a compulsory counselor group, so it's 6 days. And in one sense, it's very reasonable. It was unheard of when we were there, 7 hours a day. I mean, we're working 17 hours a day, not 7 hours a day. And that's why before our meeting started, I was giving story of how my GBC, whose name I won't mention, in the early days, he used to work so much is that he'd fall asleep in class. That was when he was giving class. He was falling asleep. So, yes, so devotees were, you know, there were examples. It's on, you can hear it. I think one's on film where some devotee is fanning Srila Prabhupada and he just falls over in front of Prabhupada flat like that, falls asleep, fanning Prabhupada. So, yes, devotees shouldn't be lazy. Anyway, whatever the standard is, but we should be active. We should not be lazy. And then here's this whole idea of nirmama. Krishna also says, nirmama moha jita sangha dosha. So one should give up all sense of proprietorship. Nothing is mine. So factually speaking, a devotee thinks everything belongs to Krishna and everything belongs to spiritual master. I was just thinking of something that I heard today from Srila Prabhupada, and that's how. Well, here's an example of how everything belongs to the guru. This was in the UK once, and one prospective disciple invited. I was there, but at that time I wasn't the initiating spiritual master. That was before. The initiating spiritual master who he accepted as guru. Now this person was a jeweler. And so I preached to him. I wasn't the person cultivating him, but I preached to him and I went to see him. And I went to his shop and he said, please bring Guru Maharaj here. That wasn't me. That was then the Acharya. And, you know, I want him to bless the shop and, you know, he should just take whatever he wants. I thought, that sounds great. So I went back and I told Guru Maharaj, Gurudev, and so we came sometime later. And I was surprised when I came in, so many of the items were no longer on the shelf. And the things that were on the shelf, I know the difference between 24 karat gold and 14 karat gold. And all the valuable things, all the diamonds and everything had disappeared. So anyway, Gurudev came in and says, Guru Maharaj, it's all yours, just take whatever you want. So I told Gurudev afterwards that actually he took one ring, but it was, there was a lot more stuff in the safe. We should have asked the C to open the safe, since ultimately everything belongs to Gurudev. May as well just open the safe as well. So yeah, not type of everything is yours, but that yes, everything is. And how do we practically engage everything in Krishna's service? How do we show that everything belongs to Krishna? One is, for instance, that devotees offer dakshina and devotees regularly give for spreading Krishna consciousness movement. That's sometimes problematic because devotees may not necessarily like what's going on in the Krishna consciousness movement around the corner. But still, that's we have to be able to dovetail the energy, money, prana, artha, diya, vacha, everything should be connected. So give up all sense of proprietorship. And manasya deha geha yoki chimur arpina tu apadinanda kishore. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur here is saying, yes, this is not my wife. This is your dasi. And she's a devotee. We're living together doing service. These are not my children. They're your devotees. I'm trying to give them something. So this whole idea of mine, and it becomes exasperated and becomes exasperating as one becomes situated in family life, because it's such a demanding thing. You see that in children. You don't have to teach them. For them, it's very natural. This is mine. The toy is mine. Something is mine. It just comes spontaneously from their ego. So similarly, this concept of mine is a very strong impetus. It's something that you can only become free from with very strong spiritual practice, which cultivates, knowledge will cultivate vairagya, detachment, and really literally living at home as if this is actually the property of somebody else. That's why here, for instance, in New Rajadam, when devotees come from elsewhere, they think it's quite revolutionary that everything belongs to Radhe Shyam. The houses belong to Radhe Shyam. People say, well, I couldn't live like that. That's a problem if you can't live like that, isn't it? Shouldn't everything belong to Krishna? Is it something that we say? Well, sure it is, as long as you don't come in and take everything. When we say everything belongs to Krishna, then why shouldn't it everything really belong to Krishna if that's what we say, everything belongs to Krishna? And endowed with feelings of loving friendship towards the spiritual master, Dridha Surida, Surit. Surit means Rid. Rid means heart. Surit means very close to one's heart. So that we should have this loving friendship, that not friendship in the sense of a pal, that relationship should always be there, but still that this is my pranabandhu. This is just like Krishna is my pranabandhu. Krishna is our friend. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but still he's our best friend. And we should never become deviated or bewildered. Anyway, that's the good fortune of a spiritual master whose disciples are like that. They're not deviated, they're not bewildered. And the last and most important thing, because usually the most important is saved for the last, he should always desire advancement in spiritual understanding. Yes. And that's a real rewarding thing for a guru, when you see this, as Krishna says, always endeavoring for perfection. That this is what a yogi is, this is what a devotee is, what a Vaishnava is, someone who's always going. It may be difficult and the going gets tough, but you still keep going, always desiring advancement and spiritual understanding, and then doesn't envy anyone. And the last thing, if we're talking about the last as being most important, amogavak, always avoiding useless conversation. If it's not furthering our Krishna consciousness, then it's useless. It's contaminating us and it's contaminating others. Okay, we sort of came to conclusion. We had a tough start. I don't know, I guess I'll talk with Chaitanya Chandra if I want to continue in this vein. It's a little difficult for me to get going, half hour to get going. And there's a lot, there are some other good topics that we could have talked about. It may be better, at least for me. I'm too picky. It may be better that I don't see everything that's going on. It makes, now I'm going back into full screen and seeing everyone. So it's, you know, it may be preferable that I just see a blank screen, or I'm just talking to the devotees here, a few devotees. But let me thank all of those devotees who are nicely dressed, who are nicely attired in tilak, sitting attentively, and so on. And I see Tandavi over there looking Hare Krishna, and Dauji and Gadagraj, and there's Bhakta Sam and Murli, Hare Krishna. So yeah, thank you all very much. And this is the way I am. I was sort of born like this, and at this age, I don't think I'm going to be changing much. Gandharvika Patel. Hare Krishna. Okay. Yeah, she's a Patel. So thank you all very much. And I'm looking here at a picture of Nishinga Pran and Manjwali. And I'm looking at a picture of them here, but they're very thin in the picture by comparison to the versions that are sitting here. Okay, I guess that's for today, and we'll certainly be in touch and communicate one way or the other. How was it, by the way, for the translation? It was okay. Tarangini says it's okay. I don't know where to find others. Rambhadra says it's okay. Okay, that's good. And actually, I don't see, where was Nishinga? I didn't see him anywhere. I guess
somewhere.
he's somewhere translating. Okay, lovely to see everyone. Yugal Priya got back safe from Mayapur. Okay, and Varshana and family are there. So everyone take care of themselves, and we'll be in touch. I hope today's class was instructive and of value. And Jairade, you're going ahead with the 3 books. Yes? Yes. Okay. So they're printing 3 books for Kartik. Hare Krishna. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Radha Shamasundar ki jai.
Jai.
Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari
Hari
Hari.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Guru Maharaj ki.
Jai.
Jai.